Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy, also known as ETCG1 on this channel. And hey, if it's your birthday, happy birthday. Why am I moving around? Because I can. And the winner is 90s Asian vehicles. Yes, this video is something of a response. That's why I'm back in the bed of my 1990 Chevrolet C1500, the truck that is the love of my life, given to me by my father. Having another tailgate party because she's still in dry dock for the winter. The video that I did about they don't make them like they used to, linked in the description along with other stuff. So always check the description of my videos. Actually, the video aired today. It's February 6th, 2017. And I went through the comments and everything before I came to the shop, and one thing I noticed and I heard over and over again, for those of you not familiar with that video, before you go and watch it, basically the premise was I had just gone to Barrett-Jackson and I came back and I actually was having discussions with the people there that I was at the show with, or at the auction with, and we were talking about, you know, what kind of vehicles will we see like in 40 years at Barrett-Jackson, you know, what classics, because they don't make them like they used to. Now, as I said in that video, that's kind of a good thing because vehicles of today are more efficient, they're safer, they have better fuel economy, they are more reliable. There has been progress, a lot of progress in the automotive world. And it has brought us many innovations and many great things. But the styling seems to have, well, it just doesn't seem to be like it was in, like, say, the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I'm not saying the 20s and 30s weren't awesome, but just I was more particularly in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And the 70s, there was a certain styling that was there that, you know, it just doesn't seem to be present today. I had asked you, the audience, you know, what you thought would be seen at Barrett-Jackson in 40, 50 years. And so many people came back with the response, 90s Asian vehicles, 90s Japanese vehicles in particular. Toyota Supra was a big one. The Mazda RX-7 was another big one. A lot of Hondas were also thrown in there. Some Nissan Skylines, which I failed to mention in the last video. I did see some Skylines. I got pictures, but I didn't get video of the Skylines that were at Barrett-Jackson. So that's already beginning. And somebody also said something to the effect of Jay Leno says that the next wave is going to be Japanese vehicles. But you also brought up some good points, like the electronics in these 90s vehicles is not the same as the simple vehicles like, say, my Ford Fairmont, which, you know, has a pretty basic electrical system and no real computers to speak of. Has an ignition module. Well, it's got a better one now. But the point is that they are very simple systems and fairly easy to restore. And some of you brought up the fact that, you know, some of those Asian vehicles, number one, succumb to a lot of rust. I mean, even my 2001 GSR has rust on the fender wells. And I don't know if you remember, but I'll post a link in the description to my Acura Vigor rust repair that rusted in the exact same spot. And all the Hondas from the 90s rotted there, at least up here in the rust belt. That may be something that sort of holds them back as far as what happens with them. But I think if the love is there, and I think there's a broader thing that is missing from that other discussion, and that is the next generation. And a lot of those people in the next generation that are into cars are watching videos like mine and others and like that, and obviously they're enthusiastic, they're automotive enthusiasts. Whereas others brought up in the comments to the same video that the quote-unquote youth of today doesn't seem to have the same interest in vehicles like they did in, say, my generation. I grew up in the 80s. And trust me, there really wasn't a whole lot in the 80s, car-wise, that you could look at and say, man, that's classic, that's great. It was just like, I can't wait to get rid of this piece of crap. For the domestics anyway, and that's where the Japanese really sort of came in, as they stepped in with their Subarus and their Toyotas and their Hondas and their Mazdas and things like that, and made reliable, cheap vehicles. And I think this is generational. You know, I was talking about me basically growing up in the 80s and the kind of things that I was into, which was 70s and 60s muscle cars and stuff, because they were cool when I was in school. And they were affordable back then. You know, some of the cars I saw at Barrett-Jackson, I used to see when I was in high school. You know, not the super rare versions of them, but, you know, like a Mustang or something like that. And, you know, I remember I was looking at a 69 Camaro that I almost bought for $300. Now, granted, it was like a rusted out Hulk, but it was a 69 Camaro for $300, and that was like 1987, 88, somewhere in that neighborhood. So wished I would have jumped on it even as a rusted out Hulk for 300 bucks. It would have been worth, probably $3,000 as a rusted out Hulk today. And this is kind of my point. So I think that niche group, you guys that are out there that are 20 somethings and 30 somethings now, it'll be what you're interested in that ends up at Barrett-Jackson. And what you're interested in are the vehicles that happened when you were growing up. And those are the vehicles of the 90s. Those are the things that you have a nostalgia connection to, because there's so much nostalgia at a car show, and particularly at like Barrett-Jackson. That's where the girl or the boy that grew up that loved cars finally got some money and is able to spend it on what they love. Cars can be a commodity to a certain extent. Okay, I get it. Some of them are buying it for an investment. They'll turn around and flip it or keep it, and just like they trade in the art world or anything else like this. But I think there's that nostalgic connection that they have, and it's based on the era that they grew up in. And they're like little time capsules. I talked about this in driving old cars, is that you get into an older vehicle or a vehicle from your generation. So say you get into, I used to have a 79 Honda Accord. That was my first Honda. I have a lot of affection for it because it was my first Honda, and the way it felt, the way it drove. Even things that weren't mine, like my parents' cars, the 70s and 80s things that they drove. My mom had like a 79 Grand Prix. Oh, what a dog of a car that was. But here's something funny. I was like, Mom, what's a Grand Prix? Point is, I think it's the generation you grew up in. I think that is the connection that you have to the vehicles in your life. But I also think there's less and less interest in vehicles. And I think part of the reason for that is because the vehicles that are out now are not inspiring in that sense. Sure, some things you look at and you say, man, that's cool. And a lot of people also said, like Hellcats and new Mustangs and all that kind of stuff. But here's the thing. They redesigned those new vehicles to look like the old designs, and they sold the crap out of them. My point is they started designing vehicles to be retro. Ford did it with their Thunderbird and brought it back, and that sold really good for like a minute. And the Mustangs that are out now, and Dodge is huge with their Challengers, and now bringing back the Demon and everything else. They're basically reaching back to that time when it was cool and bringing that stuff back and selling it as new. So they're not really coming up with new ideas. They're just taking the old ideas and modernizing them. And I'm not saying that's bad, because I drove a 2016 Dodge Challenger Scat Pack. Freaking love that thing. But I gotta tell you, it's cheap. It's on the inside, it's cheap. I mean, they spent all their money on the horsepower and everything else, but basically they stuck an iPad in the dash, well, an Android something in the dash, and digitized all the interior, but it's still just cheap muscle car interior. And they were always like that. So really they didn't change the formula all that much. But the experience of it, the sound of it, the shaker hood, love shaker hoods, okay? I think shaker hoods should be in everything. I think there should be one in my Integra. Shaker hoods, I love it. Absolutely love it. Something about watching that engine bounce around as you're driving. Yeah, I think I'm gonna need a minute. All right, I'm back. Overwhelmingly, it seems that a lot of you agree with me that things aren't made like they used to be. And a lot of you also brought it. I spoke about things being designed in a wind tunnel, and a lot of you also brought up the fact that a lot of the designs of today are dictated by the safety standards. And yes, that is also equally true as far as the wind tunnel and the safety standards. So they're basically, auto manufacturers are shoved into this small little box, and they're said, okay, make something cool. Make something people want to buy. You got these regulations, make sure we can actually sell this vehicle, because we're investing millions and billions of dollars in this model, and do it cheaply, well, do it affordably so we can keep the lights on and give you a paycheck, and make it safe, make it economical, and just inspiring, make people want to buy it. That's a tall order, I think. I really do. I don't envy the engineers of today, really. I do and I don't, because I've got a lot of tools right now that help them out, CAD systems and all that kind of thing, being able to design things in a electronic space before it comes in the real world. I realize the real world has a lot more variables than what happens inside the computer, but still, it's nice to have that kind of thing. So there you are, overwhelmingly. The classics of the future will be the retro hot rods of the day, those special, basically it seems that rare models, and rare models were a big thing at Barrett-Jackson as it is. Also those 50s, 60s, 40s, 30s, 20s, Model Ts, whatever, will still be sought after. Those will always be sought after. But the market for them may narrow up because there is less and less people that are interested in them, because they're growing up in a world where basically automobiles are appliances and it doesn't really matter. In fact, my youngest son is saying, well, I don't really care about a driver's license so much, I'll just Uber. from the mouths of babes. You know, that's their thing. I can't fault them for that. I can still be me. It's not going to take anything away from me, but there it is. 90s Asian vehicles also are going to be huge. So go out and buy some right now. You could find one for $300. It could be worth $3,000 someday if you can manage to keep it together and stop it from rusting and going back to the earth. Good luck with that. If you have automotive questions, I ask that you head over to ericthecarguy.com. Link to that in the description, along with tons of other stuff. Google+, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, if you wish to connect with me socially. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I'll see you next time.